And there's
Yeah.
this hubris to think like nature doesn't have a good balance. It's like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get it. We want to get rid of some fish that you think is maybe wasn't there 100 years ago. Now it is, and this plant was brought in, but now it's actually a new habitat for these new animals. But it's prickly, and yeah, it wasn't there 1,000 years ago, but it's here now. I don't, and it's like we always think like sometimes we can mess around like that, and like you say, these things have been going on for sometimes billions of years, let alone
Yeah.
thousands of years. And there is a hubris to think that we can just get in there and tinker, and uh, it's
Well,
it's so much
we
more
already
complex.
humans already tinkered. Like that was
We
uh,
tinker.
we tinkered long before the word science
Oh
ever
yeah,
existed.
oh yeah.
Science is revealing what some of our tinkering
Yeah, we
has
have evidence
done
to
to
show
these
the tinkering
unknown.
results.
I mean, humans, hunter gatherers, they were so the reason why we still have some of the reason perhaps that why we still have large mammals in Africa was because they evolved alongside humans, and they evolved to learn to be skittish of these gangly looking stupid weak ass primates that actually are really good at communication and cooperation and tool use, and they learned to fucking run. Nothing else did that. So we got to Australia and all these huge mammals over there. There used to be all sorts of like bigger kangaroos and all sorts of stuff that we just wiped out. Saber-toothed tiger had was king before humans showed up, and they looked at humans like a cheap quick meal and then found out otherwise. But humans used to take a form of hunting. They used to just drive mammoths off of cliffs, just like there's 100 mammoths. Let's just drive them off a cliff, and
we'll
then you
we'll
got a
eat one or
meal.
two.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll eat one or two of them. They didn't know, like my dad used to. He grew up. They would dump stuff they would dump trash in the river. And that's the thing too, is our intuition was built from those. Like, yeah, you just run the things off the. Why would you bother like running after a mammoth and jumping on it and stabbing it or whatever? You just run them off the cliff and go and get the.
Pick out the good parts.
Yeah,
The stuff
exactly.
that wasn't smashed, I'll eat that.
So yeah, there's going to be horrifying things. So yeah, I don't know, in terms of like, there are some like kind of naturalistic fallacies of like nature is just going to do its thing, and we could say that, but we'll also be, that's not always in the best interest of humans. If you're interested in human life, that's a little bit of a different conversation, because there's like, you remember when murder hornets made all the, like, there's a big pandemic and then like murder hornets too, then now there's murder hornets, what the hell is going on? And I got a hold of an entomologist and was like, what's really murder hornets, are you kidding me? Is this just clickbait or what? And he's like, yeah, the name's ridiculous. It's giant Asian hornets. They have an even fancier scientific name, of course, but there's a legitimate concern, which is going back to that same Red Queen process. These giant Asian hornets have a thing where they find a beehive, they'll go in and they'll see bees in there, and then they can't take the bees on themselves, but they can go out and get other big hornets and swarm the bees and kill them all. They lop their heads off, and then they get their whole hive. Giant the bees, where these giant Asian hornets have evolved, have very slowly, after over like millions of years, they've evolved this defense where if a hornet comes in there, the bees swarm the hornet and kill it before it goes and gets its friends to cooperate. Sometimes the hornet escapes and gets its friends, sometimes it doesn't, and there's like this nice little homeostasis, this
Gang
balance, this
warfare. It just
push
as
and
long as it's in
pull.
balance. Yeah.
Exactly, as long as it's in balance. But then what
Ugh.
happens is a giant Asian hornet comes over on a shipping container and accidentally gets released, and our bees have no defense for these giant Asian hornets. So when they do come out, they'll just very easily wipe out any beehive that they come across very easily. And that impacts us that need bees as pollinators, and like, oh my God, it's just endless with that. And so there's a lot of these plagues and everything else, they came from a city life. And then not only did we, so viruses spread more with confinement, so not only did we unknowingly confine ourselves more and more in cities, but then we connected these cities, so confined people here spreading their own diseases
With too
more
much
would
hand
then
sanitizer. Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's a hygiene hypothesis too, which is that we're too sanitary in
That's
a
what I
lot of
mean.
ways.
Yeah, like that we get weak. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's where a lot of the allergies are coming from too, and we can talk about
It's
that.
the
But
wet
that's a little
wipes.
bit
Yeah.
different. Yeah. And so then there's then we took livestock and packed them close together. And
Yeah, that's
so
terrible. Yeah.
we're creating this petri dish of, you're packing livestock together where viruses can take off in the livestock. And so we're eating, and
And
then
pumping
we're
it full of
confined
antibiotics.
more.
Yeah, I mean, it's a nightmare.
It
Yeah.
really is. And actually there's a lot of the current industrial farming has like state of the art biosecurity, so that they don't have to use as many antibiotics and stuff. And you kind of
You
the
just can't do it at that scale. I mean, it's yeah, we have friends who are ranchers down sent back down in southern Utah too. And I mean, when they do it, it's smaller scale, and they're in pastures that are rotating and key lining the soil.
yeah,
It's they get to it's a completely different process. The
yeah, yeah,
animals are completely different too. Um,
yeah, yeah.
but you can't. There's no way we could produce that much beef, for $2 a burger or something or whatever. There's just no way. It should be like $10 a burger.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm in agreement with you. And now we have what, 7 billion mouths to feed or something. It's just we're in a
yeah,
very, very complex system.
we're
And
gonna
you're
be eating
in your
bugs, bug bricks of protein Jello bricks, like the movies.
actually, that's not the worst idea. I had a
Tastes like
I
chicken.
yeah, I've eaten some bugs before. I did an episode on eating bugs recently, and other cultures do it sometimes. Who knows? Or maybe I see the like fake DNA meat that made some. I haven't talked to anyone about it. I imagine it's gone nowhere. But yeah, we'll probably keep on coming up with novel solutions. But it is overwhelming, and you're absolutely right that there needs to be better ways of communicating these things that aren't so condescending. And then I also think on the other side of that, people need to take a little more of a personal interest in being receptive towards this stuff instead
Hmm.
of like incredulity, which for someone that's been interested in science for a very long time, without lecturing anyone or anything, I'll be like, oh, I just heard this thing out about sloths, and I'll just watch people's eyes
Oh, did
glaze
you? Yeah.
over. So it's a tricky situation. And then at what point, when the stakes are high enough, that do you go, you need to listen, this is actually important, sorry for all my fun facts before. But
I,
and we all have specialties, it's like, I mean,
and we all have blind spots,
and
and
we all
it
have blind
does come
spots.
down to some of that righteousness again for all of us. I mean, we all have
Mm-hmm.
elements of that in our personality, in our psyche, things we're
Mm-hmm.
protecting, things that we've invested in, that are part of our identities. And it takes a lot of humility and humbleness to say, like, okay, maybe I was a little wrong about XYZ, but not all wrong. And,
Mm-hmm.
that's hard for all of us, especially on a public stage. There's a
Yeah.
kind of humiliation there, and you just dig in. And especially then when you're in a tribe that you have this camp with you, it's like you got to stick to the script.
Yeah, yeah.
And we have a script, we have a mission.
Well,
Um,
you're exactly right too. With I mean, with tribalism. I mean, we say tribalism like it's a bad thing, and it is in so many
community.
ways. But we have community too. We're social animals, and that's part of how we assess what we know, and or one of the there's a really fantastic book called The Knowledge Illusion: Why We Never Think Alone. And one of the fascinating things is that people tend to estimate how much they know about a given topic based on how
YouTube.
much the people around them
Yeah.
know about a given topic. So if I'm talking to you, in my mind, subconsciously, I assume that I know more about making music than I do. You assume you know more about like comedy or whatever. That's the idea of it. So they do various
Mm.
ways of testing this. So this is equally fucked with YouTube, as you said, and having access to the internet, because we don't our minds are not just in our skulls, it's also what information do I have access to, which through our evolutionary history was within our tribe. You know, this person's good at finding the right berries, this person's good at building the thing, this person's good at hunting, and collectively we're good at all of these things. Now we have the internet that gives us access to knowledge, and we tend to mistake things for what is knowable with what is already known. And so they do fun ways of testing this, which is uh, one of my favorite ways they studied this. They did a thought experiment. They had two conditions. They made up a story. They said, scientists found this new mineral. They've learned everything about it. And essentially, and then and just published it. How much do you know about this mineral? And people are like, I think I know a decent amount about this mineral. A mineral you just heard of that's a made up fictional mineral. And then the other condition is they say the exact same thing. Scientists found this mineral, they know everything about it. It's classified information. How much do you know about this mineral? And people are like, what do you mean? I don't know anything about that mineral, because they know they can't access it
Mm.
because it's classified. And so it's the exact same. So we think that just because you could Google something, there's something in your mind that's like, I already know it without even Googling it, without
If
actually
anything,
even
it
doing
gives
the
me more
research.
compassion for humans because we're so susceptible in a sense,
Oh yeah.
and we're like sponges. And again, it goes back to this thought about how much information is coming at us, information sickness. And so it's like, what do you expect? You're going to think you know about all sorts of shit. It's like, I watched
Yeah,
some videos on that and I think I got a handle on it. And, you wouldn't do this with other fields, right? Like for some
yeah,
reason, science, which is not something I know more than what I studied in up to college and things like that. And so maybe we all know a little bit about the scientific method and so forth, but
right.
I wouldn't go to like a guy who knows how to fix my car, which I don't know. I know 2% of what he knows. And I'm like, you clearly know a lot more about this than I do, and I need help. I'm not going to pretend. I have watched some videos. I don't know how to fix this. I have no idea. Way
Yeah,
beyond my pay grade. Or certain electrical stuff. It's like,
yeah, of
man, I'm
course.
scared. I don't want to screw that up. And it goes on and on and on. But if you lump the entire scientific community into sort of, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's some shenanigans. And it's like, people
Yeah,
make mistakes, sure. But like, there's a lot there that most of us don't understand about the methods of what it is to be discursive and objective.
and make things falsifiable. There are a lot of ways we can make things falsifiable ourselves and make predictions and check and see how those predictions worked out later on and find out what was wrong
But we have
in
biases that are
models.
often we
Oh, of
don't admit
course.
or
We
know,
love to
mostly
say,
don't
"I
know.
told you so."
Yeah.
It's like everyone, all of COVID made everyone just like, so like, I took, whether you're a conspiracy person or a science person
Or a prepper.
or what, a prepper, whatever else, you're like, I told you that you needed to be listening to me the whole time. And also, we're, it's interesting that you bring up that point about the mechanic and the electrician and stuff. These are interactions that we actually do deal with. And what we've learned about many of the interactions with expertise like mechanic or electrician is that some of these experts are going to swindle us, and
Yeah, right. Right, right. That's part of the human condition too. Yeah.
not always are they even intentionally doing it. They're
Ah.
not even necessarily crooked. We all tell ourselves stories of like how much we deserve or what we think we're worth, or we fudge things. You play a board game, or I play pickleball a lot. I'll misremember the score in my favor quite a
Do
bit.
you?
It happens, and we all do this. The evolution of self-deception is another important and interesting field, which is that confidence helps us. It helps us with status. It helps us get out of bed in the morning. And the average person just overestimates their ability to drive or their IQ or anything else by a little bit. They even have this is a fucking fascinating one. You take your face, take anyone's face, and you can morph things. So a lot of attractiveness is based on symmetry. It's very difficult to
Hmm.
make something symmetrical, both genetically, but also if you're symmetrical, you probably haven't had a lot of environmental insults in your life, especially early on in your life, which is a cue that your upbringing was maybe good as well. Blah blah blah, and um, so anyhow, you take anyone's face and you make it, 10% more symmetrical, 20%, 30% more symmetrical, 40%, 50% more symmetrical. And then you make it 10% wonkier, 20% wonkier, 30, 40, 50. Now you have 11 pictures. And one is your actual face. You scramble those faces up, pop them on a screen, have someone pick their face quickly, and your average person is going to pick a face that's about 20% more attractive than their actual face, the
I think
face
that's
they've
heart. That's
been
kind of
looking.
heartwarming, actually.
It is in a
Oh, how
way.
precious.
It really is. And of course, there's individual differences, people with low self-esteem that are going to pick the uglier ones and stuff. So whenever we're talking about these things, this is, even finding that 60-70% of people are doing this is a fun, exciting finding, and it's not applicable to every single thing, but it's really worth noting. But what's wonderful about the scientific method, which is really imperfect, is it's always trying to correct it. So what I love about scientists, if you listen to my show, which is like, next week I'm doing an episode about butterflies. No one
Remind
gives a
us of the
fuck.
name of the new
It's
podcast.
called Here We Are. Um, it and I've been doing it for 8 years. And what happens is I go in, I have imposter syndrome. I usually go like, here's how I think through what your research is, and then just hit me with it. What are all the gaps in my understanding? And then they tell me how wrong I am. And we have fun conversations. But what I found out really early on is not only will I talk with one person that's, say, an evolutionary biologist, will say this about gender differences, and then I talk to a sociologist who says the complete opposite about gender differences, or you hear a lot of like, actually, from scientists, but they also say I don't know more than any human I've ever, way more than I do. You ask me something, I'll start blabbing about it.
I'll give
I'll,
it a shot.
yeah, I'll take a whack at that sucker.